Hello and welcome to the YouTube page of Face to Face on City TV. This is a platform that we do the one-on-one interviews that matter, where we deal with the big issues of the day. And the big issue today is the economy, of course. As we move into election 2024, the NPP, the governing party, wants to break the 8. Can it break the 8? That's for the electors to decide. But what does he have to do to fix you and I, our economic challenges? My guest today is with Dalex Finance CEO of Dalex Finance Ken Thompson. I had an interview with him a year ago. We are back again to do an assessment of the measures put in place so far by the government and the way forward. You're welcome. In November last year, the discussion around the economy was a big one. We were picking thoughts from people who understand the industry. I came to the offices of Dalex Finance to speak to the CEO and asked him to paint a picture for me of what the economy was looking like in 2022 and make projections for 2023. He looked in his crystal ball and he said things did not look good. He actually knelt down, over a 60-year-old man kneeling, and it was embarrassing for me, and he was speaking to the president, not me, and said the president ought to fix some basic things before our ship or the economy wrecks completely. Today, 1 year on, I've come back to him to ask him, what have we done so far as a country? We are the IMF now, but are things changing? Have we seen better things happening? That's the conversation we are having. Ken Thompson, CEO, Dalex Finance, you're welcome to Face to Face.
Well, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm well. How are you too?
I'm fine, thank you.
How is your own personal economy? Are you
my own personal economy?
Yeah.
I think, my personal economy is subsumed in the Ghana economy.
Under the Ghana economy.
So, you see, they say the economy is how you feel, the value of the city in your pocket.
That's what the
value of the city of my pocket is getting smaller and smaller.
But how is Dalex Finance? I need to ask about that. How is your company doing?
We're fine. We're in business. We're still attracting deposits. We pay a fair interest rate, and we're fine. The company is fine. Of course, we always have pressure from the macro environment, but so far, we've done well, and I'm very proud of what we've been able to achieve up to date, because it's a very difficult environment. In 2022, I knelt and I spoke to the president, and I asked the president to take decisive action to save this economy. And I told a story about how I saw poverty and how I saw it coming. Things haven't changed much, except that probably the projection has tapered. And it's tapered for two main reasons.
So let's recount first what you projected about 2023. You said you saw job losses, you saw unemployment, you saw hardship, you recounted the issues, the challenges of the 70s, and you said you foresaw that.
Oh, it's happening.
It's been 1 year on now.
Oh, it's happening.
These things
it's happening.
You feared.
Oh, it's happening. And I'll come back to tell you why. Maybe it's not. It's happening, and it's at a very alarming rate. Job losses are high, company closures are high, inflation is over, food inflation is almost 50%. I think sometime was over 50%. And when inflation is at that level, that means that almost every 16 months, prices double. So there are people in this country that are going to bed hungry. The only reason why the job losses and the business closures have not been as great, and they're coming as I expected them to be, the only reason, and they're very high, because I don't want you to see myself, it's not bad, it's terrible. First, at the time I spoke to you, I didn't know that $50 billion had been pumped into this economy. It's 50 billion cedis. Put in 50 billion cedis. And also, this year we haven't paid any of our debts. So, we are enjoying some of the benefits of the money that was put in the economy. But we've got to remember that 2024, that's not going to happen. We're moving into an environment of high taxes, high inflation, the inflation is high interest rates. And that's a recipe for even bigger disaster. Huge disaster.
When you say we haven't paid our debts this year, what does that mean?
Remember that we haven't paid any of the foreign debts. So there's not as much pressure on the cedi as would have been otherwise. We haven't paid any of the debts. Even as we speak, we haven't signed any agreement with our debtors as to how we're going to pay. And I know that they've been talking.
So this is debt brought forward or debt carried forward. That's what we are living in.
Yes. So
we have freedom because we have not paid.
Exactly. Exactly.
But we cannot not pay forever.
Oh, you will pay.
At a point, we must.
Of course, you've got to pay. The argument that the discussions now that they're holding with the creditors is how much haircut will be given. I know haircut means different things to different people. Basically, if they hold us if they are due 100, what we're discussing whether we should pay them 50, or whether we should pay them 40 or 60, and how much interest rates we should pay on that. So the effects of the $50 billion pumped into the economy, the effect of us not paying our debts, has sort of reduced the rate at which jobs are disappearing. But this 2024, there's nothing like that. And that's a whole different ballgame.
Let's talk about the DDE. Before you and I did our interview, the government was experimenting with the whole IMF agenda. We've seen 2 tranches of money come from IMF. We are seeing some regulation by the IMF holding a cane over our head. Talk to me about the IMF's emergence, because the general call at the time was that we should have gone to IMF like yesterday. Now we have gone to IMF. How has the IMF journey been for us? Because that's what came with the DDE.
Okay, so let me deal with the DDE and I'll talk about the IMF. Okay, so at some point we said we were unable to pay our debts and we wanted them to restructure. So we took domestic debts, which at an average rate of say 19%, and we said we're going to pay 5%, or some 5% figure. But what we have done is that we're replacing this debt that we can't pay at 19% with the debt at 33%. Think about it. So you can't pay debt at 19%, but you are taking debt at 33% through treasury bills. If you are a subscriber 1 cedi, you take. If you subscribe by 2 cedis, you take. If you are a subscriber at 10 million, you take. So what are we doing? We're going back to where we started from. And I don't know what you call this, but if it wasn't the Bank of Ghana government, I don't know. But if it wasn't the government of the Bank of Ghana, what would you call it? So I owe you money. You are paying me 20% on it. You can't pay. You've come back to me. You've come back to me and said that, I'm going to pay you. I can't pay, so reduce it to 5%. Once I've done that and signed off, you are coming back to me and borrowing from me at 3%.
Which is higher than what the original one was.
Exactly. So what is it telling you? And the same institutions that gave money to the government at 90% that the government couldn't pay are the same institutions that are now giving money to the government at 3%.
Is it that the terms now are better than they were in the past, the repayment terms?
And for the financial institutions, instead of banks, I think on average 51% of their assets is in government paper. Are we crazy? This is craziness. You can't pay me at 90%. And I've said, okay, fine, pay 5%. And you've come back to me and you are borrowing from me at 33%. Eventually, isn't the 33% going to replace the 19%? And what's the experience been? So it doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't make sense to me.
But the domestic debt exchange program, voluntary as it is, was met with a lot of opposition. We saw some people being exempted. Some people have joined. I don't know whether I should say willy-nilly, but they are on it anyway. Is that a solution for the government, a positive one, that people are willing to join the trade-off so that there will be stability? And what does it mean for those people who should expect their maturities in 5, 10, 15 years?
I mean, as somebody who runs a finance house, this business of borrowing and not paying, it doesn't make sense to me. But, the issue is not respect to domestic debt. The issue is spending within your means. That's the point. And the IMF is a red herring. The IMF is a complete red herring. So for an economy which is how much? 80 billion? What's 3 billion? It's peanuts. It's nothing. And so...
Is it no more what the IMF will bring than what the IMF will bring? So what the IMF will do in terms of ensuring fiscal discipline is what we are subscribing to, rather than the paltry amount that they will bring in? Is that not the idea?
You see, even assuming that the IMF brings fiscal discipline with 3 billion, we still have to work on our expenditure. We have to work on our expenditure, and that's the key thing. I'll show you. And I think sometimes it's best to illustrate.
Okay.
Let me illustrate. So what we've been doing, Ghanaians.
What? Hold on a second. Is that a knife?
When we're talking, yes, a knife. When we're talking about reducing expenditure, we're not talking about this cutting bits of fat of our expenditure. Umaru, we're cutting bits and pieces of our expenditure. And I think it's very clear that Ghanaians understand this position. We're cutting bits and pieces.
Okay. Now you run a butchery. I didn't know you.
No.
What's happening here, Joe?
This is what we need to do.
A bigger cut.
Take an axe to the expenditure. If this does not illustrate the point, nothing else will. Take an axe to our expenditure. Take an axe to expenditure. So what's all this tinkering about? And that is the key issue.
So cut a bigger chunk than what we are cutting now?
I was saying this morning that as a country, what we must focus on now is how we protect the poor. If you talk about cutting expenditure, it's a long list of things that we can cut. But we need to protect the poor, and we need to focus on health, education. We need to focus on health, education.
Infrastructure?
No. Food. There are 3 things. The 4th one I can't remember. Everything else we need to cut, because we are in a very bad place. Well, this is what we need to do with Ghana expenditure. We're joking.
So this is what we are doing.
This is what we're doing.
So for those who are listening on radio, Ken is holding a smaller knife, which symbolizes what we're currently doing with cutting our expenditure. And you have a bigger butcher size machete.
I was actually looking for a bigger knife. I couldn't find one. I was going to bring an axe. This is what we need to do with our expenditure.
So it means that expenditure is still, and is it needless expenditure? Because a chunk of our expenditure is salaries, isn't it?
I don't care.
What can you do about that?
I don't care what anybody says. You have to cut your coat according to your size. And I've been talking about living within our means forever.
Show me what can be cut out of the expenditure. So you said that we should prioritize health, education, food. What are the unnecessary things or the nuisance expenditure that you think we can do?
There's so many things.
Wages you cannot do anything about.
Of course you can cut wages. I mean, if you can't afford the people, what do you do?
If you cut wages, you are essentially calling for a street revolution that will lead to destabilization.
This I'm going to share with you something that I learned from a good friend of mine. He says, you are holding the yam and you're holding the knife. You're asking me which one to cut. You decide what to cut. You have to cut. You decide which part to cut. It's not my decision as to what government should do. You cut. You have all the choices. You can't cut stuff. That's fine. Cut something else. Health, education, food. There's one more thing that I can't remember now. Those are things that are important because we've got to protect the most vulnerable in our society. We have to. But can't we see the writing on the wall? We can see the writing on the wall. It's coming. I mean, it's here. It's only getting worse. And like I tell some people, we are like rabbits caught in the headlights of
oncoming vehicles.
We're frozen. But we can see what is happening.
But you can't do anything about it.
Well, you've got to change your lifestyle drastically. You've got to eat less. You've got to start walking. If your car breaks down, you can't repair it. If your car goes off the road, you can't buy a new one. That's the reality. So we've got to do everything to protect the vulnerable, and everything else you've got to cut.
When you spoke to the president, you were looking through the crystal ball for 2023. With hindsight, would you say your predictions were gloomier than they should have been? Maybe you exaggerated what we should expect in 2023, and that things have been managed now. The government boasts that they've stabilized the rate at which the CD is depreciating. They've stabilized the rate at which the price of a liter of fuel at the pumps is going up at all. So they have got hold on the issues, they say. Things have stabilized, albeit at a wrong footing level.
There's a lot of English that's thrown about with regards to Ghana's economy. I've been speaking on Ghana's economy since 2015. And, my predictions have always been spot on. I started with the currency, and I talked about how the CD was overvalued. Then the last one I did was a conversation with Ken, and I had a cutout of Honorable Minister, and, speaking to him, telling him about the Ghana economy, and I said, you should stop borrowing, increase taxes, talk about cutting expenditure, and I said agriculture was a silver bullet. That's 2018. And at the same time, this is a public event at Alisa Hotel. The room was full. And I talked at that time that if anything should happen, famine, war, the disaster was going to be much earlier than I was predicting. And I said that what would the disaster look like? I said we'll be unable to pay wages and salaries. I said that there will be business closures. I also said that there will be job losses. Have there not been job losses? Have businesses not closed? The only reason that we're able to pay salaries is that we put 50 billion in, and now we have restructured our debts. So the writing's on the wall. The way to solve this problem is to cut our expenditure. And one of the things that we do is that we, rather than cut expenditure, and that's why we're borrowing at that ridiculous level, we raise taxes. And we have all sorts of taxes, but I'd like to refer you to a quote by Winston Churchill, and I'll paraphrase. He said, if you try and tax your way to develop, it's like a man standing in a bucket and lifting themselves up by the handle.
It's pointless.
It's pointless. So the reality is the reality. I knelt down and I spoke to the president. 2023 has been very bad. 2024 will be much, much worse.
I'm going to ask you to predict 2024 for me, but the BOG, the central bank, what is the role of the central bank in all of this? Is there anything the BOG could have done differently to save us? Or the BOG, by the virtue of the fact that it is the monetary side of government, would just do whatever they've asked them to do? Are there things they can do to stop this from going, from the boat from capsizing?
No, I've got to be very careful how I talk about BOG because, they regulate me, so I've got to be very careful.
don't be afraid.
Yeah, right. But I can only share with you experiences of other central banks. And some central banks are very pro-development. So the BOG, can increase its development stance, can help business, can help the financial sector. You can look at it, overall and see how it can influence the growth of the Ghanaian economy. That's how I see it.
I see. This is Face to Face on City TV. My name is Umaru Sanda Amadu. My guest is Ken Thompson. He's CEO of Dalex Finance. He made a prediction about 2023. We are expecting the budget of 2024 to be ready in a week or so. I want to ask him what his advice would be, one, to the finance minister, Ken Thompson, what he's going to say to the president. And now the governing party has elected the vice president as its flag bearer. He's an economist. He's been celebrated a lot of the time before he became vice president. The economy doesn't look like things are looking good now. Does his election as flag bearer mean anything? And then 2024 is an election year. We know how expenditure jumps out of the roof. He is saying that we should cut down on expenditure. But we also do know that election years are the times that the governments are most reckless. How should that be dealt with? Stay with us, please.
City TV is live on DSTV. Go to channel 363. On GoTV, access City TV on channel 182. On a digital TV, please press the menu button on the remote control and run a new search on your TV. Take note that without an antenna, you cannot access City TV on your television. City TV can be accessed on a free-to-air digital box like the GoTV and StarTimes box. City TV, it's your world.
You're welcome back. This is Face to Face on City TV. I'm Umaru Sanda Amadu. My guest, Ken Thompson, CEO of Dalex Finance. Your namesake, Ken Thompson, is going to present the budget next week to Parliament. What should he say and what should he not say in that budget? If you were the one going to present that budget, rather, let me put it out, if you were the one holding the briefcase, appearing before Mr. Speaker and his Parliament, what would you not say and what would you say?
We're facing difficult times, and we're going to face even more difficult times. And any politician who does not acknowledge that is either lying to us or doesn't understand their brief. Any politician doesn't do that. He's either lying to us or doesn't understand a brief. Honorable Ken Thompson is a man of God, and I'm sure that he will tell us the truth. Because I remember on his appointment, he said that he will tell Ghanaians the truth. And I hold him to it. I've sat through a lot of manifestos and I've sat through a lot of budgets. And every time they read the budget, or you read the manifesto, read a state opening, the speech, the State of Nation address. It makes you think that Ghana is going to become America in 6 months. And I've sat in this country, and every time my hopes have been crushed. I've been through too many emotional highs and emotional lows. I've had it. I would like a presentation that focuses on the truth, where we are as a nation and what we need to do. I like a presentation that creates a sense of urgency. We need to be urgent in the way we do things. I say I like a presentation that gives us hope, but that is, for me, something we should do later. But let us for once tell Ghanaians the truth about the nation.
So you should make concessions.
When you say concessions, what do you mean? There's nothing about concession.
He should concede.
Yes, but it's considered. They've talked about, the president has talked about never before has so many forces come together to create this situation. His Honorable the President has talked about how things are difficult, and we should be bold enough to say it publicly.
When the government and its spokesperson say that the problem we are facing now are because of COVID-19 and Russia-Ukraine, do you disagree? Because they say that all the indices show that they were doing so well before COVID, so 2017 through 2020, they were doing brilliantly, and the statistics would support them. And that the only reason we are in this mess is what do you call it? Hand of God, or maybe
hand of God, yeah. Okay.
Something beyond their control.
Yeah, okay. So I'll take you back to what I've said in the past, and I'll take you back to what others have said in the past. And I'm telling you that in 2018, publicly, I said, stop borrowing, you're heading for disaster, increase taxes, and agriculture is a silver bullet. And many people have said that. And I also said publicly that the road on which we were carrying on, if anything should happen, anything should shift, war, famine, we'll be in this situation much earlier than I was predicting. So for me...
So our success between 2017 and 2020 was a smoke screen?
You see, when you live in a country where you see frantic people building, people are building, you see new four-wheel drives, and Ken Thompson comes up and says Ghana is broke.
It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. But all that money was borrowed, and we used all the money for consumption. All that money was borrowed. Where is it? Where is it? So, let's even assume that, of course, that, COVID and Ukraine had an effect. Of course, there was some effect. But all COVID and Ukraine did was to bring forward what was going to happen.
So we're already limping.
Stop borrowing. This is stop borrowing. Increase taxes. We're heading for disaster. Agriculture is a silver bullet. And face the reality now. These are things that were being said before.
You keep repeating taxes. This government's huge mantra was from taxation to production before they won the election. In 2017, when they brought the Asempa budget, they slashed what they call nuisance taxes. Ghanaians jubilated. When they brought e-levy, which was a new tax, Ghanaians were angry. And you saw how the revenues fell that year. You were saying they should go back the tax way. When we already reeling under taxes, look, I was happy at the ports.
I'm telling
look at NHIL.
I'm telling you what I said in 2018.
Yes.
Now, we need to simplify the tax system and cut expenditure.
So we should still have more taxes?
No. No more taxes, but cut expenditure. Well, already we have a system that frustrates entrepreneurs. I mean, doing business is just a hassle. And like I've said before, entrepreneurs lack inspiration. It's too much hassle. No. And I've also said that, trying to develop yourself with taxes is like a man standing in a bucket and lifting himself by the handle. No more taxes. Cut expenditure.
Should the taxes be cut?
Privatize.
Should taxes be reduced, or they should be maintained as they are?
Let's maintain it for now.
Even though people are reeling under them,
let's say for the next 12 months. Because you see, we need to cut our expenditure. We need to give the private sector confidence to work. And the government of this country is too big. It's too big. And government...
And you're talking about a bureaucracy called government.
No. That infrastructure and the things that government... Why is the government doing transport?
It should be left to private sector.
Of course.
Is transport not a necessary, thing for a poor society like ours? Government should intervene in buses called Ayalolo. Government should intervene in
go to their yards and see the number of buses that
they are parked there, cooling off.
Good. Cooling off. Yes. They're broken down.
They are rotting.
You see, let's not even go down this road of whether government or not should be involved in business. Government has no business in business. Zero. Privatize everything that you can privatize. Of course, you always run the risk of the fact that the people that will have money and the people that will be able to afford to buy these companies and just perpetuate a certain kind of elite that are... No, that's okay. It doesn't matter. Privatize, make sure you put in procedures to protect the state and other people, the other parts that want to come in. Privatize. Cut expenditure, privatize. You got to do that. You don't have a choice. And those are two key things that I would do. I'll also create a sense of urgency. We're not urgent. I mean, speak to anybody. I mean, we're not urgent.
Maybe because there's no doomsday staring us in the face like you are fearing.
Oh, it's happening. I see it. I see poverty every day. I see poverty in my house. I see poverty when I open my gate. I see poverty on my way to work. I see poverty. We're poor. We can't continue like this. We can't. And no matter how much English you wrap around what is happening, we are in disaster, and disaster is going to get bigger. You talked about the potential president being an economist. It's got nothing to do with economics.
We'll talk about him, but I want us to remain on 2024. So 2023 didn't look good for you. What do you see in 2024? Or what can you see?
I see more of 2023. I see more job losses. I see more business closures. I can see that.
Are you not being overly pessimistic?
Well, that's how I see it. And I stand by what I believe in. That's how I see it. That's how I see it. And
what is the scientific fact underpinning your sight?
Okay, I work in the real economy. I talk to business people. I see what they're going through. I talk to young people. I see what they're going through. I mean, it's so easy to see. I can see that the government, which is the biggest spender. Think about it. What is happening is that your father here is the government, who is the breadwinner, has lost their job. Won't your life change? I don't need somebody to tell me, throw GDP figures at me to know that our life will change. The government has no money. And you see, the money to develop, a lot of it comes from outside. We have no access to that money. So how are we going to develop? Where's the money to spend? Where are those contracts going to come from? I mean, it's a no-brainer. Our father, who is the government, has lost their job. Your life will change. Suddenly, you can't switch on your air conditioners. Suddenly, you've got to change house. Suddenly, you've got to go to new schools. Suddenly, you start to shop in a different place. Suddenly, you wear second-hand clothes. That is the reality. We've got to face up to the reality.
Okay, they've been able to put a hold on how much the price of fuel is. Is that not something that should be celebrated? And also the CD depreciation. They've said that they brought gold for oil, for instance, which is solving that particular problem.
I can assure you, when the CD starts to rise again, then let's have this conversation. But we're not paying our debts. But those are foreign debts. Wouldn't it stabilize the currency? I mean, oil price, we don't determine the price of oil. The oil is a commodity. Everybody knows the price of a commodity. So if oil is selling at $10 per barrel, we can't sell it at $9. It's not possible. So if the price of oil stabilizes on the world market, of course our price will stabilize.
So they are not to blame then for the price of fuel at the pumps, the government?
No, the government is not to blame for the price. I mean, the oil is a commodity. But how about food? Food inflation is very high.
That's crazy too.
Ghana is not the only country that has gone through COVID, but I think we have the third highest interest rate regime in Africa. I mean, who can borrow at 33% or 45%? And every business needs to borrow to grow. Every business, even Facebook has debt. And Facebook, they have a huge cash cow. Even Apple has debt, and they have a huge cash cow. Because you need working capital. But which business can survive on interest rate of 40% plus? I mean, really, come on.
But at this stage that it appears the dollar has been arrested, locked, and the key...
Don't go there. Let's have this discussion when you start to pay your debts.
Because that's what actually I'm going to say. So at what point do you think the dollar is going to break jail again? Or is it the CD? One of them will break
One of them break jail. Oh, as soon as we sign agreements with the foreign creditors.
And when is that going to be?
I don't know. I hear November.
How long can we stall that for?
Well, eventually we have to pay. You know, the challenge is that because of our default, we're not going to get those kind of monies for a long time. You know, it's going to take over 10 years before they start to even think that maybe
We are trustworthy.
We are trustworthy, because then they start to forget, or maybe we should give them a little bit of money. But that's not going to happen soon. And until that time comes, we've got to dig deep. But we can't continue with an interest rate regime what we have now, because we can't develop. I mean, high interest rates, high taxes, high inflation is a recession.
So by what time do we foresee the CD struggling again? Because now it's stable. By what time? Is there a period that we can say this is...
Start from maybe next March. Start from next March. Once we sign those agreements, we start paying, the CD will come under pressure. And you see...
But what would December mean to the CD?
December?
Yes. Because December is when we see a lot of economic activities, right? Is that good for the CD? Would that be bad for the CD? How would January look like? How would March, February look like next year?
When was the last time you went to town?
December
is not looking good,
Yeah.
I don't think anything is happening. Not much is happening. I mean, the price of the dollar is demand and supply. So technically, if the demand for dollars is high and the supply is low, the price will rise.
And the reason because people will not be importing, because we import chicken, rice, everything for December. And that's what I'm asking. So
for who to buy?
For us to buy. So
I can assure you, everybody's taste have changed. I'll tell you a very personal story. I used to occasionally, maybe once a month, I'll take my kids out and say, let's go and have breakfast, let's go to a buffet. I stop. Go around the restaurants, go around the hotels and see who's there spending. You see, so once again, we need to face the reality. We need to create a sense of urgency. We need to speak the truth to ourselves. And if the politicians don't speak the truth, either they don't understand what they're getting themselves into, or they're lying.
Next year is an election year. Election year, we see a lot of expenditure, most of it which is reckless. Now, it means that a lot of money will be pumped into the system. Is that good for us overall, or is bad for us? And how do you advise next year be dealt with by the government?
With respect to election year, what would normally happen is that the government will spend some money. I don't think that will change. Probably they'll find some way to spend money. But Ghanaians, don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. It's all temporary. Let's not be fooled. It's all temporary. Where we are is in a very bad place. Maybe they find some money to spend, little money to spend, but trust me, where we are, we're in a bad place. And don't be fooled.
So if we see a lot of expenditure happening next year...
Forget about it. Don't be fooled.
When the books are eventually audited, what would that look like?
You'll have a deep hole, and you have to find a way to climb out of it.
Is there a way we can... Because we have this law in Parliament, right, created by Parliament, where expenditure should not exceed a certain level. We have reduced it, but we had to raise it during COVID. What can be done about that? What should the government be doing?
You see,
can people be jailed for over expenditure? That's what I'm looking at.
You see, the issue with Ghana is that we are all complicit. So what do we want? What I can tell you is that we're in disaster and it's going to get much worse. But what do we want as Ghanaians? Because the people in Parliament are Ghanaians, they reflect us. We put them there. So we should decide what we want. If I was reading a corruption report from 1970, Justice in report, and also the auditor's reports around that time. And if you take out the dates, it's like today, what we talk about. So what do we as Ghanaians want? What I am saying is that we're in a bad place. We're going to see job closures, we're going to see business closures, we're going to see job losses, we're going to see currency go through the roof. We have to cut expenditure. Cut. Big. But what do we want?
We have oil. We've had more than 10 years of oil. Why is that not changing our situation? Because the Arab world, most of it developed because of oil that they discovered. Why is that not working for us?
I don't know what the per capita figures are, but if you take, two things. First, the oil revenue is not as significant as what they have in the Middle East. And if you take the per capita, say you take the number of barrels of oil per a Saudi national comparison is really rare. I mean, so when we talk about it, we should not.
So our oil is insignificant.
It's insignificant. I mean, it will help.
But it's been supporting our budget over the period.
Yeah, well, because we're not doing what we're supposed to do. But really, the oil is, it's nothing. We can't place any bets on the oil. It's not going to get out of trouble.
We have cocoa.
We have cocoa. It's always been cocoa. You see, it's not so much how much you earn, it's what you use the money for. So if you take a country like Singapore, they only borrow, and listen to this carefully, they only borrow to fund capital projects where they determine that the return will exceed their expectations. Think about it. They only borrow to fund capital projects. We borrow to pay salaries. We borrow to buy four-wheel drives. Hello.
Ken, our airports, the international airport, is busy with Ghanaians trying to japa or run away. People are going away for greener pastures, and the numbers are increasing in recent times. Could remittances from these people be the solution for us, maybe?
Omar, let's be serious. I mean, when we're talking about fixing a country's problems, we're talking about young people desperate and suffering and running away.
Maybe things are better there. When they go there, they can send things back.
I personally, I remember we finished university. My last paper was 23rd June. And 26th June, I was on the plane, I was out. Mm-hmm. And when I sat on the plane, I said, this country, I'm never coming back. Because there was no opportunity. And I suspect that the young people going, have the same feeling. For me, what is sad is that it's not as easy to go as it was then. But it's easy for me now to say that they should stay and fight for a better Ghana. But it doesn't look like there's any other choice. It's easy for me to say that.
But flight is the best way than to fight.
Well, it's easy for me to say stay and fight for a better Ghana. Because when I was at that age, I mean, that didn't make sense to me. What am I fighting for? I mean, I see people that are enjoying a certain lifestyle. They live in a glass box. And they are my people I went to school with, people, my contemporaries, and I don't see any chance of me attaining that life, even getting close. What do I do? Mm-hmm. But I don't want to. I don't want to have that discussion, with somebody because it's a personal decision. Okay. It really is a personal decision.
Right. This is Face to Face on City TV. When we come back, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, celebrated economist, is now the flag bearer of the NPP and also the vice president of the land, head of the economic management team. Would anything change in cabinet? Should something change in cabinet? And does his election as flag bearer mean anything to the economy and even our national politics? Stay with us.
City TV is live on DSTV. Go to channel 363. On GoTV, access City TV on channel 182. On a digital TV, please press the menu button on the remote control and run a new search on your TV. Take note that without an antenna, you cannot access City TV on your television. City TV can be accessed on a free-to-air digital box like the GoTV and Star Times box. City TV, it's your world.
You're welcome back. This is Face to Face on City TV. Ken, last year you sat and knelt before the president and begged him. It is his final year. He has 12 to 13 months to remain as president. I wanted to speak to him. What should he do? What should he not do? Because he's a man who believes in legacies.
Honorable, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa. I know you have Ghana at heart, and I know you do everything to make this country what you've always talked about, what it's supposed to be. I know you've also said that the next president, that's what said, would hopefully sort out the issues. But at the same time, I know that he still wields a huge amount of influence on the affairs of state. I mean, as we've elected flag bearers, I think, I've knelt before you, that's something I've done. I mean, at the moment, what I'll do is probably lie prostrate between His Excellency Dr. Bawumia and His Excellency John Mahama. But in your last year, I really would like you to tell Ghanaians the truth about our economy, the truth about our circumstances, and show us a way forward. I've already brandished my knife, and you know what this means. But Ghanaians deserve good and competent leaders. I'm not saying you're not good or not, I'm just saying we deserve it. I also know that in 1980, Ghana's GDP per capita was bigger than that of China. I also know that in 40 years, China reduced poverty from over 800 million people to 30 million people. And from 8 million graduates, they had over 300 million graduates. So we can do it. And your influence, your stature, your vision, please shine and direct this country in your last year. And me personally, I'll forever cherish you. I'll forever value you. And I'll forever consider you as one person who has made a difference in our lives. Thank you.
Let's talk about his successor on the New Patriotic Party's ticket now. The party has elected Dr. Umaru Bawumia as flag bearer. He's in cabinet. He chairs the economic management team. He wants to win an election. Would it result in any shift in the agenda of the cabinet? Should it reflect in the agenda of the cabinet? What should be Dr. Bawumia's priorities?
Of course, I mean, the economy is, what's on everybody's mind. Prosperity for Ghanaians is also on everybody's mind. But what he should be thinking about, if I were in his position, is about the team he's going to work with. Because it's not a matter of whether you're an economist or not. It's whether you can organize, whether, you are tough, you can take decisions, whether you can create a mission and share it, and whether you can take people along on that vision. And those are things that are important. So being an economist, well, it helps, but it's not that he knows that.
But he'll be the first person who is an economist who is getting close to the presidency, isn't he, if my history is correct? Okay. Would that change anything? Well, because we've seen a professor in taxation at Amils, we've seen Jerry Rawlings, we know his background, we've seen John Kufuor, we've seen John Mahama, a communicator, we have seen Nana Akufo-Addo, a human rights lawyer. Now we are going to see Bawumia, and I'm not saying he's the president, or he will be the president, but he's a heartbeat away from the presidency. Would that mean anything to national politics?
You've got to remember that our president, His Honorable His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, actually, I think his first degree was in economics.
Okay.
And he also taught economics. So it's not the first time we're going to have somebody who is an economist as a leader. But I'll go back to what I said. It's got nothing to do with whether you're an economist or not. It's got absolutely nothing. If you take all the successful countries in the world, how you define success, you probably find one economist. And the one that comes to mind is Mario Draghi. He was Italian, but he was really powerful. It was technocrats brought in at a difficult time. Apart from that, I can't think of anybody who's an economist. So it's not about being an economist. It's about having all those other things that make you a successful leader. That's what's
now that he's going to be in the driver's seat of the party, he's going to lead the party into elections next year. What are the priority areas for him as vice president in case his party wants to break the 8? what are the things they should be doing between now and then, and the next election, so that they can truly break this 8. And this is not advice to the NPP, but it's advice for the growth of the country.
They should tell us the truth. Tell us the truth. And tell us how you intend to resolve the issues. That's it. Just tell the truth. For me, that's more important. Let's have a truth bond between ourselves and our politicians, and then we can say these are the best people to lead us out of to get us where we want to be.
Are there some last-minute measures that can be taken, policy measures? Are there things that have to be specifically stopped? Are there new things that should be introduced?
I mean, I would, if for nothing at all, I would really go for still cutting expenditure. And do it, don't do the tinkering. I mean, properly cut expenditure and then try and bring down interest rates. That's very important. And let the private sector work and actually show that you have a strong desire to allow the private sector to work, to give private entrepreneurs inspiration to then build a business. Because this country will be changed by the private sector.
What about job creation? The government has tried with unemployment situation being dealt with through the Nation Builder Score that ran for 3 years.
I remember the Nation Builder Score said it would fail. It failed. Well, even communist China doesn't create jobs. Then Ghana says it's creating jobs. Who does that? Who does that?
You are supposed to provide jobs for the people. When they graduate from university, give them jobs.
You are supposed to provide an environment that allows businesses to prosper and those businesses to create jobs. And last but not least, I believe that this economy must be owned by Ghanaians, because no foreigner has ever developed any country. This country can't be ruled by foreigners. There's nowhere in the world that's been ruled by foreigners. So we've got to make a conscious effort and use the government's machinery to make sure that Ghanaians own the economy. And it should be Ghanaians in the private sector. Government creating jobs. Come on. Who's fooling who? And this is all the things that I talk about. Let's speak truth to the people. And the people are smart enough to know who is capable of solving their problems.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, Ken.
Thank you too.
That's Ken Thompson. He's CEO of Dalex Finance. We spoke in November 2022. It's November 2023. We've just finished speaking. I'm sure we'll speak in November 2024. That would be around the election period. If we had to vote on November 7, then maybe just a few days before the election or a few days after the election. And if it will be in December or December 7, there will be a month before the election. But we'll have a conversation again here on Face to Face and see if the president will listen to what he says and what the projections for 2025 would be. Thank you for watching Face to Face on City TV. My name is Umaru Sanda Amadu. Stay with us. This is City TV. It's your world.